Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? My name is Walter de Torres. I am one of the co-founders of Pixel Mafia, an art services company based in Manila, Philippines. It is my pleasure today to introduce Juney Dijkstra, Operations Director at EA's External Development Intelligence Team, or commonly known as XDI. XDI supports over 50 EA franchises and central teams like FC, Battlefield, The Sims, Apex Legends, and Frostbite through finding, signing, and optimizing external development engagements with uniquely diverse partners worldwide. She is also the founder and director of the Game Production Community, a 6,000+ member B2B game industry community of producers, project managers, and leaders focused on exchanging knowledge and experiences in pursuit of sustainable, diverse, profitable game development practices. You know, the topic that this panel is going to be covering today, I think, is one that's often overlooked. But I believe that it's these nuances and cultural differences that can really make the difference between a project that's successful and one that may end prematurely. So please welcome Juney and the rest of the panel.
Thank you all so much for coming. Very good to see such a hefty crowd. Hope you'll be able to take something away. Before I go into my panel intro, I would love to invite my panelists to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Juney. I'm Andreza. I'm a business development lead at Airship Interactive. We're based, I'm a Brazilian, and I work for Airship. Is based in England. So it's going to be very interesting to bring some insights, some personal experiences as well. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for all. Marla?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Marla Dijkstra Rausch. I am the founder and CEO of Animation Vertigo and Animation Vertigo Asia, which is located both in the US and Manila, Philippines, actually, like Walter. Yes, it's kind of interesting and quite exciting to be here to talk a little bit about the side of our world. Karin?
Yeah. Hi. So I'm Karin. I'm a senior external development manager at Remedy. So we're makers of games like Control and Alan Wake and of course Max Payne. And I'm based in Sweden. Remedy is based in Finland. So I'm here for the Nordics perspective here.
Yeah. So hi everyone. I'm Yo-Yo Wu from EA, same team as Juney, XDI. Development director and the business unit leader for shooter and mobile and central tech team. I'm very honored to be here, join an amazing panel of females, and talk about cross-cultural collaboration in our daily life.
Yes, thank you so much. So conflict is inevitable, and I would argue vital if we want to grow, if we want to learn and grow and live not just a resilient, but anti-fragile life. And in my Dutch egalitarian and very direct and upfront perspective, I also believe that conflict resolution, even though I acknowledge that timing can be nuanced, should always be sought for us to be able to develop further. So conflict, in my experience, almost always involves multiple people. And that means that communication is an integral part to its resolution. And that communication is often going to be cross-cultural. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to double-click on how communication impacts the resolution of conflict, especially across different cultures. We're going to start by discussing how you can choose the right mode of communication, followed by who should be involved in that communication and why, before diving into the more meatier, spicier part, which is how our culture and our background can either inadvertently or deliberately influence the way that we resolve conflict. And if we have time, we might open up for a little bit of live Q&A as well. So with that, I'd love to get started. I'll start with you, Yo-Yo. When we're talking about, in essence, like think there is a conflict, how would you choose, based on your background, what the right mode of communication is? We have options like in-person, voice and video calls, text. Where would you start?
Yeah, very interesting question. We're starting with a topic conflict that traditionally the the Eastern Asian culture was not very good at dealing with. We're not very good at getting engaged in a critical conversation. It's very we feel it's very hard for us to deliver bad messages. And that is why we're trying to deliver it when there's a safety space, where there's room of intimacy, which meaning if we are able to meet people face to face, it might be the best occasion that we deliver something that might not be the best piece of news.
Yeah. I'd love to ask the rest of the audience, or the rest of the panelists, if they have thoughts to add.
Yeah, so, sorry. So in Brazil, we feel the same. We never will come to a situation or to a meeting saying, hey, we have a problem. This is not something that we feel comfortable in doing. First, we would sweeten in a little bit and trying to explain the whole situation before, and then say, so because of all that, we have this situation happening. And it's always it's much better always through a meal as well. This is very cultural, like, oh, let's go for dinner and then we can discuss the next steps of the project, and then you throw out the problems and how to solve it. But of course, it's not always like that. In a world where we have meetings, online meetings all the time, you cannot just, hey, let's have a meal. So having this direct conflict resolution and direct conversations with clients and partners can be a little bit challenging for us. But yeah, this is our view a little bit.
Yeah, I find it so interesting that, I mean, you both, and for me as well, like we don't like, we like this part, like having conflict or expressing criticism or talking about conflict with other people. It's just that we kind of, we just do it in a different, like react to it in a different way. So, I mean, Sweden, Nordics, are the same way. Like we find it pretty uncomfortable with conflict, but would be more leaning into maybe like running away from it in a bit. So maybe writing mails instead, and instead of just talking face to face. Even though everyone, of course, knows that face to face is a good way of solving things. I think what I see is that people more often are more comfortable with just expressing criticism in a written media, or like on Slack or on mails or so. So I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, that applies to me personally as well. I would prefer to write it out to ensure that I can get my message across in the way that I intended it, use the right phrasing, line out the different arguments. So that it resonates with me. I mean, again, Dutch background, so also a little bit in that Western European sphere. So moving on to who should be involved. When you are dealing with a situation where you've got two sides with different companies, different company visions, what contributes to who, based on hierarchy, based on seniority, should be involved in resolving a conflict?
Well, we do have, we are known to be very, how can I put that? Conflict resolutioning, let's say like that. We like to try to solve the conflict in the way that we can, in all the manners that we can, using all the resources and all the ways that we can actually talk to the client directly, see how we can resolve the problem without bringing upper higher management to the case. This can be a little bit, how can I put that, this could be a little bit seen, not very well seen from the partner perspective, but we have this way of, oh, I can do that. Let's try to resolve here in our in a way, in the best way for both parties. And when we have to escalate that for upper management, and then this means for us that Houston, we have a problem.
Right. I think similar, right, with the Philippines. Hierarchy means something. There's talking to someone who's of a higher position, definitely, especially in a meeting. People tend to address anybody. I think in the Western world, when you talk to somebody, you can talk to anybody who's going to be the one who's responsible for the project. For example, if it's an animation, you're going to be talking to someone, and when you're talking to someone, you want to direct it to the person who's the most responsible. In the Philippines, the tendency is if you're talking to the person who's most responsible, which is the animator, they'll feel quite intimidated and would prefer that you actually talk to someone who's higher up, because not only is it something of a respect for the hierarchy, but it also is being unsure on what they're going to be saying, whether it's correct or not, perhaps even some version of insecurity maybe. But the idea is there is a person above that you can talk to, and it is not talking down to them if you decide to talk to the higher ups. The idea being that giving the respect to those who are of position gives them also the ability to tell them in their own language what it is exactly that the client might be needing. And it's just for everybody else's comfortability. For us, it's something that I've often fought. I'm often called Miss Marla. And if anybody else here, Sir Walter, for example, regardless of how many times you've actually asked people, don't do that, it's fine and everything, it is a comfortability to know that there is somebody who is up in the hierarchy, and it's a level of respect. So if clients are talking, sir, sir or ma'am would be the title, and then they'll be having that conversation. It's just easier to have that conversation.
And it's, I would very much resonate that in Asian culture, especially like China has also been like having a lot of hierarchical culture. And though like in an international business occasion, you barely see we each other call ourselves with respect names, but actually in our own language, it is a level of respect if you call them by like director and family name. For example, I could be very much like Director Wu in my culture, and people, if they really, really, really want to show respect, they could even call me something more higher up, right? Like they could, like if you are, for example, the associate director, is actually more respectful to call them directly the director. Like you don't call out the associate part just to promote you to the next level to show respect. But well, that's just like a very respectful meaning. It's not about like, hey, we only want to speak with the most powerful people in the room, right? It's more about, I do think that you are capable of making the decision. I respect you as the key stakeholder in this conversation.
Yeah, well, in Brazil it's not like that at all. We are very, we treat each other by nicknames usually, and I can relate that with the British as well. Even the emails is with the nicknames, and it's like it's being part of a gang. If you don't have a nickname, then like you're not as close as the team. So and it's not in a bad way that we give other people's nickname. It's like you're calling me Andreza. So we have that as a really to show proximity, but also to generate trust. So if you, it's like if you have a person that you really want to get close to them, and then you start like having this closer relationship, we don't establish layers. We're just like all together, and we establish that, okay, so we're all here, we're all the same level, so let's resolve that. So that's the way that we see it.
Yeah, in Sweden we have usually a very flat hierarchy when it comes to at the workspace, both for good and for bad. But it's that's how it usually looks. And there is a thing in there's a thing in Swedish culture that is very ingrained in our culture that is called jantelagen. And everyone from Sweden here will know what I mean by that. And that is the thought that the idea that you should never think that you are better than anyone else. And that is something that is, it's a bit hard to explain, but that is something that is influencing how we think. Like people who are grown up in Sweden, it influences how we think, how we act, around each other. And it's very important to us that you should just never think that you're better than anyone else. So when being in contact with cultures that have very like a hierarchy and addressing very formal ways of addressing each other, it can make Swedish people a bit uncomfortable. Just that because it's highlighting a hierarchy that, of course, we understand the hierarchy is there, but we just don't want to get reminded of it in a sense. So that's something that I've seen in my work is that just like having our like internal teams meeting with some external team for the first time, and the external team addressing them as like sir or ma'am, and that's and the Nordic team being very a bit uncomfortable with that, and just because you are just not used to that. Yeah. So that is something that I need to kind of learn our teams that, hey, no, this is not them just like trying to like this is just them being respectful, and it's nothing wrong with that, even though you feel uncomfortable. So yeah, it's interesting.
Agreed. Again, from a Dutch perspective, it's very similar to Sweden. We kind of presume that we can just talk to anyone of any hierarchy level, and that we can have that conversation, but we need to be a little bit more mindful and a little bit more considerate sometimes. And also, again, like you said, Karin, become a little bit more comfortable with being seen as someone that is in a higher position, even if we don't feel that way, if we consider everyone to be our equal in the same way. So that is a nice segue into the meatiest bit, and also, as mentioned, potentially the somewhat more spicy bit of our conversation, which is the emphasis of culture and background, both inadvertently and consciously on the resolution of conflict. So, Karin, staying with you, what is your interpretation of personal space, both inside the office and at conferences?
So, personal space in office. So I mean, when one good like Swedish people and Nordic people are usually quite reserved and want to have our personal space, and especially in the workspace. But at the same time, outside of work, we are very open. We're very hugging a lot and just being very close. Going out, partying with people, like we are open people, but it's just that in the workspace we are pretty, a bit close, reserved, exactly, and that always poses a bit of a challenge, in especially like spaces like this. That is little bit of both, where we like it's not us going to the office, it's not our working buddies, but we do both work and we do both the social hanging out part. And I know that just a lot of people get a bit weird. They're like, yeah, wait, is this a hugging? Like, should I hug now? Should I not hug? Like, and so if you approach a Swedish person with a hug and they're like this, then it's just the brain that is trying to figure out, like, hey, is this, are we hugging or are we not hugging? So
What are we doing right now? Do we hug? Do we shake? Do we? Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
2 kisses, 3 kisses.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. How many?
So I totally can relate. Of course, this is a personal experience. We learn. I have an international relation background, so we teach in our a university how to treat respectfully others, respect their culture and all that, but they never bring up like, oh, how Brazilians are or how this kind of part of the world reacts to. We learn to bow, we learn to get the cards and all that. And then, yeah, like for us, it's so natural. We are very touchy people. So if we are talking, I'll be like touching all the time, touching the arms and doing that. And I only realize in spaces like this, like international conferences where you have people from all the types of backgrounds, that it can be misinterpreted when I touch someone while talking, and not only hugging, right? And sometimes we don't even think about it. We just like, we like to express ourselves using the hands. We like to express ourselves being loud. And I think I got some situations that was a little bit uncomfortable for both sides because I didn't mean that, and the other person was not understanding what's happening. So, okay, so lesson learned. Next time, like, keep my hands in my pockets, and that's it.
I think it's very similar to the Philippines as well. There's a respect that you have for in work, right? People who are coming in, visitors and things like that. The Philippines is a very welcoming, very hospitable, group of people. If you ever come to the Philippines, know that their homes will be available to all of you, and you can always come visit, and they will be saying yes. But they're also going to be very respectful of the space that you have. If you show that you are distant or you're not the type to hug, we will not generally hug you, and it's not an automatic thing. The automatic hugging, or what we call beso, which is to put your cheek on another person's cheek, is generally something that we reserve for people we already know or are comfortable with. And you might see that if you ever go to the Philippine booth. When we come in first, we'll probably give each other a hug and a beso, and that's how we greet each other. And the closer you get to doesn't necessarily mean that it happens to clients. That's a little off. But the idea is that when you get more comfortable, the space that you show us that you're comfortable in is generally what we will respect to be the space. However, that to say, once you have a meal with Southeast Asia in general, but once you have a meal, you have that exchange that we're now in a common ground, we're now very comfortable with each other. You're probably going to be exchanging jokes with each other, some internal funny stuff that you're going to be talking about. So in that sense, the next time you see each other, there might now be a hug. Maybe not a beso, because still, but definitely as your relationship grows, the space gets a little bit more close.
Exactly. I mean, hugging is definitely not a thing in Chinese culture as well as a lot of Asian cultures. But you still see me doing a lot of hugs, so if I'm hugging you, we're good friends. But I still remember, I've been in the industry for a long time, so I learned how to hug. But I still remember awkward moment when I first come out for trips and start to hug people. I step on people's toes. I smash my toe onto people's shoulders, kind of thing, because there's a little bit I don't know which direction, which angle, and then so if you're seeing people from Asian culture trying to hug you first, please welcome them, because it's not a thing that we are very used to doing in our daily life, and we're trying to adapt to the culture, and please forgive us if we step on your toes.
No. And then To continue on this topic a little bit with regards to language and formality in that sense, how does that influence conversation?
Well, we can think about a couple of ways. We are not very formal. And of course, I'm just like sharing my experience. But in general, Brazilians, if you ever have the chance of meeting a Brazilian, we don't see much boundaries of, okay, so I'm crossing. Like, we see this as a huge opportunity of building friendship, and sometimes can be a little bit challenging for the other part to see and sometimes a little bit seen as a little bit disrespectful. And this is something that we, of course, us that work with international companies, we are more mindful of that. But if you ever come to Brazil, people will be treating you, and they don't care of who you are or where you come from. They will just think that they are being so nice that they want to give you all the Brazilian experience, and then they will be informal, they will treat you, they will be hugging you, they will be doing all those things. When, for example, if, of course, in an event like that, we try to behave ourselves, and then we try to read the room first and say, okay, so where do I go here? Do I call you sir or miss, or and then we follow the lead, but in a more cultural way. We don't see that as there's a disrespectful way of treating others. So.
And we've also touched a little bit about how you could come off relatively strong compared to other cultures.
Yeah. Sometimes we can be a little bit pushy. To some things that we really want, and bringing up the previous topic of who we should address. When we want something besides resolving things internally, we bring up, okay, so now we get it, now we're gonna get it, and this can be a little bit annoying to the other part as well. So yeah.
And this is one that I want to toss to all three of you. The concept and level of comfort with swear words?
Oh yeah, we swear a lot. In Sweden, in our language, we have a wide variety of swear words. But something that I notice is when Swedish people speak English, they only use one. Which is the, I mean...
It starts with an F and it has four letters. As you know.
And for a Swedish person, they would kind of use that as one, because we have a variety that is like going from mild to pretty bad. But we would even
instead we have a hierarchy, you mean, of swear words.
Yeah, exactly. We have a flat hierarchy in our workspace, but we have a very extensive hierarchy when it comes to what swear words to use. No, but that's the thing is, like, even for the mild ones, we would replace them with the F word in English. So I know that we can come off as pretty foul-mouthed, pretty much. Like, we could make some people uncomfortable that are from cultures where you don't use swear words a lot, because that we might come off as a bit aggressive if we are in meetings and just swearing a lot. But it's, I think that is kind of a translation error, pretty much, for us, that we swear a lot in Sweden.
So do we. Yeah, I think it's interesting because in a personal, in a very casual manner, the Philippines, yes, there's a lot of Filipino swear words, and it's part of the language. Like, I guess in any other country as well, it's part of the language. It's part to emphasize something, or you want to, make fun of something, and then you swear first in Tagalog and whatever. However, on the other side, if, let's say, as you were saying, let's say you were in a meeting and people started swearing, it is taken as, are they being aggressive? Are they being mad? Is this a level of professionalism that I feel respected? Do I think that they're swearing at me? And sometimes that can get lost in translation when you're having just what you feel might be a casual conversation, and on our side we feel like, oh, this is fun and everything, or I'm not going to be swearing right now because I don't know how you are, and then you swear. There is that initial jolt of, were they mad at me, or is this something of an offensive thing that I've just done? But then, like anything else, the more you communicate, the more you get to know somebody, you'll find that that's something. And then the next thing you know, Filipinos will start teaching you, the various swear words that you can use to be able to, respond back.
Express yourself
Exactly,
creatively.
express yourself.
So, Marla, staying with you a little bit, the most controversial topic that we'll start, the gender topic.
Oh.
You opened this up during our prep, and I can't help but ask you for a little bit of an elaboration on how you think it might contribute.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's, it's coincidental and also quite important that the panel is actually of all women. Gender, when it comes to culture, gender on its own is already, complicated enough, but to further expand it through culture, we're looking at traditions and what we think or what they think. And it's, I guess, coming from a patriarchal society in the Philippines, the tendency is for women not to actually be the first one to voice things out. They might be the leads, they might be the heads of studio, they might be the person in charge, but the tendency is if somebody is in front and they're a man and they're telling a female leader what is going on, it may seem like it's submissive to actually say yes with a smile and very easily, try to conform because that's the level of respect. And then not so much in the East, I think. Mm-hmm. Speaking out as a woman is not common. There's always that initial, maybe I may be repeating myself, or this might not be as important. There's a tendency to minimize what we're about to say before we say something. Mm-hmm. And it's also not wanting to, offend anyone, and enough effort to, be in that space where you're like, okay, I don't want to offend anyone, but at the same time, I really have to say this thing that is happening and why this part in the contract or this part of the negotiation is not going to work out. But you compare that with a man, it's a little bit more aggressive. There can be a little bit more back and forth. It's going to be a little bit more jovial. They'll go through it through jokes and stuff like that. We'll go through it through, oh, maybe we shouldn't put that in the contract, or maybe we can negotiate that one with a laugh. That's also another way that we're conveying conversation without we're conveying the negotiation without necessarily trying to offend anyone. So there's different ways that male and female, especially in the Philippines, how they bridge this negotiation.
Yeah, I very much agree with Marla. Well, female leaders are not that common in our culture, but it also brings more importance for us to be aware of. Both gender brings a lot of value to the conversation, yes. Right? We have a slightly different perspective. We have a lot of different angles. Our perception towards expectation and perception are different. That's why we make a good team, right? And we need to be very consciously putting all stakeholders into one conversation to make everyone heard. For example, in EA, we have Women's Ultimate Team, which is supporting women career growth and all the having this community voice out, but also not strictly for women. It's not a team that only female can join. You can join as a male, as a supporter, and you can be vocal. You can be within the community as long as you realize there's value for everyone to be vocal, to be contributing. And I think it's a very important thing for us to be aware of.
Yeah, and Brazil is the same. I have some really was not even working in the game industry, but where I was working and there was a room full of men, and we like to be seen as equal as them. I had to swear a lot. I had to actually to speak out loud more than Brazilians usually do. And most of the times I was seen as hysterical. I know this, this is very, but it was until you get in the point that you get the respect of the whole team. So we, me as an experience as in a Brazilian background and of course cultural, we have that. It's really Latin. We have a lot of groups. Women are we're strong much more than we were before. But we do have groups to support ourselves, to support the women, and that's why we have so many international groups as well to voice women. I don't think it's not it is for a reason. But it's still something, and sometimes, and I don't want to put men and women, who is the best or whatever. I don't want to put in that way. I generally believe that it's a cultural thing that we need to educate everyone, even the woman and the man, and because sometimes they don't even know what is happening. And then, but you feel it. You don't know if it's good or bad. You don't know if it's what is happening, and you learn only later. But yeah, it's and I do believe that female women have more. How can I say that? They understand, they put in themselves in the other people's shoes more. Yeah, they have more sympathy and empathy to the problems and try to solve. Of course, this is not trying to generalize anything, but this is just my perception.
Yeah, I often feel like I'm one of those examples that can't be generalized because I generally tend to feel like a bulldozer in a china shop. Yeah. So, similar kind of topic, Yo-Yo, for you. What is the meaning of silence in this kind of communication?
Well, I think not only China, in a lot of Asian cultures, silence has power. Like, if I stop speaking for now, something happens. That's why I'm trying to fill the room with some laughter. Apologize. But yes, I think we realize there's an interesting cultural phenomenon that in the conversation, we don't only collect information from speeches. Well, from a scientific research, only 30% of information is actually delivered from the language, vocal language itself. It's a combination of gestures, interactions, eye contact, all of them, right? And we have a very interesting expression. I think it's similar in some Japanese culture, like read the ear, we call it. Read the ear. It's like if somebody can collect a holistic information and get what is happening in the atmosphere, we call them he or she can read the air. So that is why silent, if you don't speak, but you still deliver a lot of message in the room, that is already a power. So that's also why it's important for us in a lot of cases to meet face to face and deliver some messages, because there are some hidden messages. Like if you only write in a letter or something, very few percentage of information had been really coming through.
I think you even described a situation where there were negotiations that were completed in a room with two people without any words.
Well, we have different ways to deliver those messages, right? Well, I didn't do that. I don't know that trick, but I heard in some part of our culture, there are silent negotiations. Like you hide your hand into a sleeve, and then you touch each other like numbers, and eye contact. Yeah, and then you got a deal. There are something like that, but I'm not saying we should do the business here. We're having a conference there because we want to talk to each other. That's not a problem, but I'm just saying it also has power.
Yeah.
So we encourage you to do that in your meetings.
That's the
Tell me, tell me later if you got a deal.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting to say that like silence has power, because in Sweden, like we're so afraid of silence, and I realize now that it's because silence has power, right? So
That's true.
So if we were in a negotiation or in a or in just conversation and the room goes silent, I mean that would be a really bad thing for us. Like that would be things are going bad. We are doing something wrong. We always kind of chase to fill the silence with something, even if it's just
Laughter.
makes sense. Yeah, just making a bad joke or whatever. Like it's we are very we're a bit afraid of silence.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, like Brazil. Like silence is not something we are used to. We need to talk, and if the other person is silent, and then we start talking and then like it's a whole mess because you're talking there alone, and then the other person is just, and then we think like, oh my god, they didn't like me. Something is happening. We're never talking again. So we get very uncomfortable as well with silence.
Yeah, I think there was actually a book that I read about the East and West. Eastern culture tends to look at silence as a tool to be able to communicate strength, to be able to communicate coming from a sense of power that you can suddenly be quiet and know that everybody's going to be listening to you, and the next words that you're going to be saying is relevant or important. Whereas in the West, the idea of being quiet means that you're not as aggressive. You're not trying to be confident. You're not being confident. You're not expressing yourself. You're not pushing your agenda.
You don't have something to say.
Yeah, which makes it interesting, because then in a world where you come together from very different cultures and somebody becomes quiet because that's where they feel they're going to get their strength to be able to negotiate well, the other party might feel that, oh, I'm winning, or I'm actually, getting my point across. And so that can be a bit of a conflict there, a misunderstanding that can come from there on both their parts and what they expect the other person to feel or see in that matter.
Yeah, agreed. So many lessons to learn.
Uh-huh.
So we have a few minutes left, so I am going to look a little bit to the future, towards conflict prevention rather than just resolving the conflict that already exists. And as I will be starting with you, how can we effectively partner with folks from Brazilian culture to set ourselves up for tough conversations and prevent escalation?
Yes. So as I think I started talking about this, something that's very strong in our culture is food. So we truly believe that deals are made through a meal, because you put your guard down when you're eating, and you're more open to listen. So this is our personal way of feeling comfortable in bringing our new partners or our clients to a meal. So a lot of people are here already invited for a meal. But of course, it doesn't mean that we don't need to escalate that to a higher manager, or sometimes we are all together in a room and everyone from the company is encouraging to do that and to be there. So this is how we see growing. So I would much rather prefer to get an airplane and visit our partners and just to have a meal than let's talk over a Zoom call, because it's not personal. it seems that you get so much done when you are in person and you get so much inside. And I was talking to someone this morning that when you actually meet a person, you know how they react to some messages that you send or to an email. You know how they're speaking to you. So this is how we see how it's the foundational of starting a good relationship, and then we grow from there. So I don't know about you.
I think something else that I wanted to touch on is just that personal part, the friendship part. And I'll toss this to Yo-Yo after you answer this one, is, I mean, in our very first conversation, I think I already learned the name of your dog.
Yes. And I think some of the things, we get very personal. We don't make, I'm not going to say we don't, but we tend not to make deals with people that we don't know. And we have a saying in Brazil that it's QI, quem indica in Portuguese, because we have a huge culture of that, like who indicates like this person for a position or this company to work with you. So we are truly based in this kind of approach, and we totally believe in that. So if we are friends and then I tell someone else that you are a good person, they will totally trust you and they will want to make deals with you. I've seen that in other cultures as well, but in Brazil it's very strong.
Yeah, food is really definitely one of the most important thing in our culture. Like a lot of business are done through meals or after meals. It's also like just to resonate what Andreza and Marla have been saying. It's a very good way for us to show hospitality, right? So to be able to share our culture through food. We also have like a lot of good food. I hope you like Chinese food. Very wide range of food choices, sometimes too wide.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is like, we do hope our friends to share the same plate, so that if you could admire the food, you can admire the culture. That means we have a lot in common, so that we're building trust and honesty throughout food, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and one more thing to add on that, it's I think it's a lot in our background as well. Brazilian and South America in general, we value so much food. It's almost sacred. So Juney had to eat a lot because I was almost forcing her all the time. So Juney, try this. This is amazing. Like, oh, I don't eat meat. I don't care. Just eat it. So,
I can attest to having signed deals based on 7 mango ice creams.
Yeah, true.
They were good.
Yeah, and nowadays she just texts me like, okay, so Andreza, I know 7 places, very nice, of ice cream in this, so we need to go. I say, okay, is it a meeting? But yeah, in Brazil, it's very strong.
Yeah. I think as well, just to add to that one, it's in Southeast Asia, the Philippines, the idea of sharing a meal is also a sign that this relationship is good.
Yes.
So if you ever have a meeting and you get together, and when you get together they don't serve you anything except for drinks, there is a problem. It's a very big one, and it's a sign that they're trying to tell you this is not working. And on the other hand, if they try to feed you things that probably is not something that you would have tried, all the delicacies that's going to be in the Philippines. If you do go to GDS in Rocha in February, they will try to feed you these balut and all of these things. Check it out. But the idea is we want to share the culture with you. We want to tell you that we've accepted you. You are part of our family. This is what we're doing. We are partners. Let's have a good relationship, and let's bridge this and make sure that it's a long-term one. So if you ever, when you meet us and everything, go to the Philippine booth or anything, they will offer you food, because this is our way of saying, hey, we all are accepting of you, and let's make a deal.
Yeah. So Marla, staying with you for another probably final question. What in my experience working with a variety of cultures, but especially also from Asia, they're not as eager to step up and ask questions, let alone give feedback. How can we make space for that?
That's a great question, because I think even working with my team at the start, especially if they're new employees, the hardest thing for me to get from them is feedback, or if there's any issues in clarity, they don't ask questions. And the idea behind that is they don't want to look like they don't know it. If the running joke in the Philippines is if you ask anyone in the street, oh, how do I get to Starbucks? They'll tell you. It will always be wrong. They just want you to get away. It's like it's over there, and then leave so you can go. But they don't want to tell you no. They don't want to embarrass themselves by feeling like I don't know something. So they'd rather give you the wrong answer. But the way to really bridge that is getting that relationship going. It sounds kind of, I don't know, it takes a long time, but talking to someone and saying it really is very important to me to hear what you have to say about this, what you say is important because you see it as you're working on it. So if you have any questions for me, please do ask me. It's something that, George, sorry about that. It's something that I want to know. And this makes it a little easier to ask that question, to make it feel that I'm not going to look at you and think that you don't know anything. This is me just saying, I need feedback. And that will reassure everybody and that.
And my record so far is 9 months of working with a partner until they were finally willing to start opening up and contributing and giving me feedback. And after that, it was amazing. They finally started truly shining, truly sharing their expertise. But it took a while of just very deliberately in every single agenda. We would love to hear your thoughts. Do you have any questions? It took a while. Yeah. All right. Any other, before I ask the rest of the panel if they have any further thoughts to share, I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 live Q&A questions. So give it some thought. Let us know if there's, raise your hand if you have a question that you would ask the panel. In the meantime, panel, any further thoughts? Are we already ready? Oh. We're already ready.
Test. First of all, thank you for an incredibly insightful and timely panel. I think this is a really important issue as the industry goes global. I had kind of a funny question. I think one of the most common cultural divides that I experience in my work life is semantics. So phrases that are common in your mother tongue that, when translated into someone else's language, read differently. For instance, we often get notes from our East Asian clients that say, please pay better attention to XYZ, which is a totally reasonable request, but reads a little bit like a teacher shaking their finger at you. So I wanted to flip that on its ear and give each of you a chance to say, is there a common English language business phrase that sounds wrong or aggressive or funny in your language, or to people of your culture?
Oh,
God. Now I'm thinking.
Tons.
Yeah, very good question.
But
about.
I think the worst part is the other way around, like for Brazilians, because sometimes I literally translate what a slang or a sentence is in Portuguese, and I got like every single time I got misunderstood in a very bad way. But yeah, but honestly, this is in my perspective. Having English as a second language, we don't get too offended to how you speak to us, because this is not our mother language, so we definitely understand. Like, yeah, so they mean that. Probably that will be very bad if it will be like in Portuguese, and then you tell me something, and I was like, got it. So yeah.
I think on our side, it's not necessarily things that you might say in English that doesn't translate well. It is the directness. Please correct this. versus, there's something wrong here. Could you take a look at this again? Might be a little longer, but there is a difference in tone that for a lot of people would be just, oh, okay, I'll just correct this and it's no big deal. But then you say it that way, it can be taken as, whoa, offensive. Why? I mean, can't you be a little bit more, polite about that? So,
in both ways, right?
Yeah.
I think this is a very sensitive topic, by the way, because we're dealing with people from all around the world all the time through messages, to texts. And I think if everyone gives a little bit of more attention to how they are written down, and can be a little bit like too much, like, can you please see this? But just to make sure that the communication is not lost in between the lines.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the politeness in English, I often see it's get lost for people that are not speaking English, and even for us. I mean, I work a lot with Finnish people, and they tend to be just not have those politeness things in the messages. This is very direct, and it's just while I will be more, since I work with a lot of people from all over the world, I always like, hey, can you please, thank you, would you be so kind, and like always add those things. But since that is not normally something that we use in our languages, it's in Swedish or Finnish, like people just don't add it, people don't think about it, because that's not how our languages are built. So. Yeah, it's interesting.
So the question, I guess, is more about like day-to-day conversation, like in work. If that's so, because we are speaking a different language, I think the more concern is not being polite, because we know you're good people. Like if we have get into like a facial conversation, we know you're good people. But more importantly, I would say the precise and transparency will be the most important thing, because, well, a lot of Asian team are also living on translators. Like if you're being too windy on your messages, like, generally I really like this piece of art. It's just like a little bit that you can change, and then you know there will be extra translator time, like working time, real working time spent on translating that first sentence, right? And you would rather just get to that feedback directly to save everybody's work. So yeah, and we will appreciate that directness and transparency actually to increase the efficiency overall, hopefully.
It's different. And again, I will warn everyone working with me, bulldozer in a China shop. So with that, I want to thank all of our panelists. We are going to be available around the show, so if you have other questions that you would like to ask, feel free to hit us up. We'd love to exchange thoughts, experiences, etc. But with that, we're wrapping up. Thank you all.